Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Allie.
And we just had a fun moment of a little... We have a little cultural differences pop up here and there. I've actually seen a lot on, like, the WSL social media accounts. They're doing a lot of Leah Williamson and Emily Fox, and, like, how do you say this if you're English, and how do you say this if you're American? And it's very different words. And we just had a little bit of a funny thing, because Allie texted me that they were nipping off to the bathroom or something. Like, is that it?
I think nipping to the loo, I believe, was the phrase I used.
Nipping to the loo. And I had to explain to Allie what nipping means in the United States. I don't think it's appropriate for this podcast.
No, but it's not the same thing. And as any UK listeners will tell you, nipping just means quickly doing something over here.
All right, but without further ado, that is not the point of this podcast. It's not to talk about the differences in cultural, although sometimes that becomes fun. We're here to talk about the world of women's football, and we've got a great episode for you today. We're going to talk NWSL, including Orlando Pride winning the Shield for the first time in club history. What happened with Angel City? Why did they get fined? And we've also got an incredible interview in the back half of this episode with USL Super League Brooklyn FC head coach. That's right. We're talking USL Super League, everybody. We've done a lot of, like, what is the USL Super League? And now we're going to get to start covering it. I'm really excited, Allie.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, more football all the time.
More football. Let's go, baby. So I guess let's just do it.
So the big news that we have to cover with the NWSL is it's official. Orlando Pride have won the Shield. They took it after beating Washington Spirit 2-0. They are still undefeated, which means I'm odds on to being right, which I'm very excited about because it doesn't happen very often. So I'm very excited by that fact.
That is most important, actually. I had this game picked that if somebody was going to upset Orlando, it was going to be Washington Spirit. Now there's 3 games left, and it's starting to look like Orlando might do it.
They might just do it. The only thing that could maybe upset it is they have a bit of a hangover after this game because they have been partying, celebrating hard. So let's talk about the Pride and that Shield winning game.
I mean, first and foremost, we just have to say, congratulations to the Orlando Pride. And equally so, congratulations to the Orlando Pride fans. And specifically, if you are a fan that has been there from the jump, from the get-go, if you've been supporting this team through thick and thin, and as we said on last week's podcast, most of it's been thin. We talked last week, Allie, about these fans have been through it, and we're like equally happy for these fans as we are for the team. Truly, first Shield in Orlando Pride history. It's only the second time, by the way, that this team has made the playoffs in NWSL history. Isn't that crazy?
Crazy, because they feel like such a stall of the league that this is only the second time. That's mental. And to do it by winning the Shield, like...
I mean, that'll tell you just how bad, frankly, they've been for so long. The only other time that they made the playoffs was 2017, which ironically was Marta's first year in the NWSL and first year with the Orlando Pride. She's only ever been at the Orlando Pride. She came to the league in 2017 and has played with the Orlando Pride since.
Considering all of the madness that has happened with Orlando Pride, the fact that she's stuck with them through, like you said, the thick and thin and the quite thin times is... For someone of Marta's caliber, that is massive.
Truly. I mean, it's kind of, it's crazy that they've been able to hold on to her for so long, but she's been so loyal to them. And I guess to see them win this game, and technically Marta had the game winner. For those of you who didn't see it, Orlando won 2-0 versus Washington Spirit. This was a number 1 in Orlando Pride hosting number 2 in Washington Spirit. And the technical game winner was the penalty kick that Marta buried to make it 1-0. And Orlando Pride got some insurance after that, making it 2-0, and that's the final score. But there's something so poetic about that and Marta getting the technical game winning goal. I mean, this is the year that she announced she was retiring from international football. That was her last Olympics. We don't know if this is her last season. We just have to spend a moment being like, you know what? Good for all of them and good for Marta.
As always, good for Marta.
I feel like there's so many things to talk about here. So maybe first let's briefly touch on the game, Allie, because last week when we were previewing this game, I specifically said a lot of this is going to depend on what players Washington Spirit have available. We can't sit here and say that's why they didn't win. So many players weren't available, but it makes such a big difference that I think we need to just touch on the game as a whole and first and foremost say Washington was missing Kruger, Sars, Rodman, Hirschfeld, Santos. I mean, Hal Hirschfeld was out on a yellow card accumulation, and there were some ridiculous yellow cards in this game, so it makes me wonder if she actually should have been out in some yellow card accumulation.
I was going to say, the reffing decisions on this game was interesting, shall we say.
There was some great sideline reporting in this game, and they said that 25 of the 34 total goals that Washington Spirit had scored that year came from players that were not on the field on that day. That's a crazy amount. Just to put that into perspective, that's 74% of your total goals coming from players that weren't on the field that day. What was your overall take on this game, Allie?
You know, it was more even than I thought it was going to be. I did actually say last week that I thought that Orlando might be slightly cagey because this would be the one to guarantee the Shield, or, you know, they want to keep that streak up of being unbeaten. So I thought they might be a bit more cagey. It was much more even than I thought it was going to be, especially as you mentioned the players that Spirit had out. But overall, Orlando did exactly what Orlando has been doing, which is they were defensively very tough. Anna Morehouse again played really well and kept that shutout. And then they managed to get the luck the other end of the pitch.
Yeah, you know, we have talked a lot about the Orlando back line this year, Allie, but I still don't feel like they get enough credit. This team doesn't rank number one in goals scored, but they certainly rank number one in goals against. And this back line has solidified themselves as one of the best in the league. And Sam's, in my opinion, is a huge part of it. I mean, they all are. So my take on this game really was, you know, it felt even in terms of the flow of the game. Possession, who's on the ball. But what didn't feel even is that Orlando could have been up at halftime. Orlando had dangerous opportunities, but it was because they missed the net. They had some miscue shots. Banda did uncharacteristically miss from a distance a couple times that she's certainly scored from already this year. And on the other side, you know, Washington, they didn't really have dangerous opportunities. They didn't really test Anna Morehouse. And on the other hand, Aubrey Kingsbury was very much tested in net by the Orlando Pride. And I think that tells a really good story. Like, it didn't really feel like there was the fire that the Spirit had throughout this whole season. And we know why. They were missing a lot of firepower. They were missing their goal scorers. And there's only so many injuries you can take. And then to come up against the number one team. If we had seen Washington Spirit at their peak come into Orlando, I think this would be a different story. But credit to Orlando. They really took it. And I thought that this was a really deserving win, a really deserving scoreline. Again, Washington played them well. But in terms of dangerous moments, opportunities, there wasn't so much for Washington, and there was a lot for Orlando.
Before we move on, we have to talk about these two coaches because they've both done an incredible job with these teams. So we've got to spend a little bit of time on these coaches and what they've managed to do. Specifically Hines. Specifically Seb Hines.
Oh, interesting that you say specifically Seb Hines. I guess I understand why. It's his... So Seb Hines, head coach of Orlando Pride, it's his second year in the league. It's his second year with the Orlando Pride as the head coach. And it certainly feels that since he's come in, Orlando has shifted in their identity. I mean, we talked a lot last year about how, yeah, their results necessarily weren't all the way there for Orlando, but they missed the playoffs last year by a 2-point goal differential. And that's it. They grew throughout last year, and it feels like it changed when Seb Hines took over.
100%, and he is still not getting the flowers that he deserves, and it's driving me up the wall. I have a feeling
he's going to be coach of the year. Laura Harvey. Okay, so the NWSL announced the new trophies, right? The new Shield. We say adios to the dinner plate. I know you're going to be so sad to see that go. And they announced the new trophy for the most valuable player. And Laura Harvey tweeted that she hopes that head coach of the year gets some kind of hardware too and not just a tweet. And then she mentioned Seb Hines' names. Like, I hope Seb Hines gets more than a tweet like I did last year. Which is just like chaotic and brutal in all the best ways. I do agree with her. I think that Seb Hines is going to get head coach of the year because how can you not? This team might finish the year undefeated, which has never been done in the NWSL. But on the other side, we'll also talk about Jonathan Heraldez, who came over from Barcelona. He missed the beginning of the season and he took over a little bit into it. And I think both of these head coaches are drawing players. There are players who are on these teams because they wanted to play for that head coach. And right now, with the new CBA in the era of no drafts, complete player autonomy, where you can be a free agent, a head coach that players want to play for is going to draw talent, and that's going to win championships. These two teams, they're at the top this year, but I think that we're going to find them at least in the top 5 in the next couple of years because of these two head coaches and what they can do and who they can draw. Should we spend a moment on the dinner plate, Allie?
Yes, because to be honest, I'm not a big fan of the new one anyway.
You don't like the new NWSL Shield?
No.
Oh, I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. What should it look like? Do you think it should be like a literal shield?
Yeah, an actual shield would be great, actually. I think I quite like that.
For me, it was like anything that was bigger than the tiny, like, 6-inch by 6-inch dinner plate that used to be the NWSL Shield was going to be good because it looked so comical when players were holding this tiny little dinner plate up. Like, yay, we won.
Yeah, we kept saying over in England, it's what you serve high tea on. Like, it was a tray. It was not. So I do get that it is better, but I'm like, I still think there's room for improvement.
All right, let's finish on this. I feel like there's a couple little things to say about each team. First, for me, it was really nice to see Morgan Gautreau in the center midfield with Orlando. I just think she's such an underrated player in the NWSL, and it was nice to see her finally. She's bounced around with a lot of different teams. It was nice to see her fit in the defensive center mid position there, and I think her style works really well with what they need in Orlando. But then on the flip side, I thought Sullivan and Stainbrook had a hard time playing that dual 6 together, that dual defensive center mid. I like the dual defensive center mid, but Stainbrook had a hard time. She was behind the play a lot in this game, and it made it really hard for Washington to defend. And then we have to shout out Carson Pickett, a fan fave.
Yes.
On the Orlando Pride, who, listen, she was with the Pride from 2018 to 2020, had some stints then with the Courage, then Louisville, and then now back to the Pride this year. She's like an NWSL legend, essentially, at this point. So I was so happy to see her on the Pride, just to see that smile on her face winning that shield. But the final question we have to ask, Allie, and you alluded to this at the top when we first started talking about this game. Very few times has the team that has won the shield gone on and won the championship. 2 times has it happened, and it was North Carolina, but 2 different years. Will winning the shield ultimately be almost the downfall, the curse of the Orlando Pride this year? Will the curse of the shield affect them?
Oh, that is so interesting. I feel like the way the team are playing now and with the players that they have, that this could be the team to do it and could be the team to do the double, because I feel like they have got, you know, the motivation of this could be Marta's last season. We don't know, but, you know, they probably know if it's her hanging up the boots or not. You've got, you know, players like Banda that have come in and absolutely revolutionized Orlando Pride. So I think if there's going to be a squad at the moment that could make the double and do the double, then it is this Orlando Pride squad. But that's still a lot of pressure on them to do it. And as we saw, you know, San Diego got to the final, right? Before they fell out. No, they didn't even get to the final.
They lost in the semis. The final was Seattle and Gotham.
There we go. So yeah, so it could be that they do a San Diego, but I feel honestly that if there's a team that's going to do it, it's this Orlando Pride team.
I would agree. It's hard to bet against them right now, right? I do understand maybe why it's so hard to do the double, though, because you saw how much we all saw how much that meant when they won the Shield. That feels like a celebration, like you just won the league. And it's almost like how they say a Super Bowl hangover in the NFL, where it's like you've won the championship, or you feel like you've won the championship when you win the Shield. And it's really hard to then mentally keep pushing as if you're still hungry for that championship when it feels like you've already attained it. You know, I get why it's so difficult mentally for teams to do that.
So very quickly, last 2 talking points on the NWSL and the playoffs. Firstly, Shawinga has tied Sam Kerr's regular season goal tally. That record has stood for a long time because, as we all know, Sam Kerr has been at Chelsea for a long time. and it's very likely that she is going to break it because there is 3 matches left in regular season. And with the form that she's on right now, I find it very hard to believe that she's just going to stop scoring goals. So I do believe we're going to finally see that record broken. And then finally, we have officially got 3 teams out of the playoff race. That is Utah, Seattle, and Houston. All of them can no longer reach the playoff spots, and we salute them and wish them a better season next year.
That we do. Utah's on a 2-game winning streak right now, and with the most recent win, they just pulled ahead over Seattle in the standings. And I think if you were to have said before the season started, Seattle with 3 games left is going to be second from the bottom, just a point above Houston, most people in the NWSL would say you were crazy. That's not going to happen. But it's been a difficult season for all 3 of these teams.
Over now to the news that broke about Angel City. Angel City have been fined $200,000. They've been docked 3 points, which is going to put a serious dent in their playoff hopes for this season. And they've also had people suspended over these violations. So tell me, because I remember messaging you going, like, talk to me like I'm a 3-year-old. What exactly have Angel City done to warrant all of these fines, penalties, everything else?
Okay, so the very high-level simple answer is that they exceeded the salary cap. But there's a lot more to this, and we'll get into all of it and also really the implications of those 3 points that you just mentioned. So the reason it's a little more complicated is because we've talked about the new CBA and how within the new CBA, there is a newly instituted salary cap. So just keep that in mind, and we'll come back to this. So during the 2023 calendar year, Angel City entered into 5, quote, side letters directly with players, and that affected the multi-year agreements, but those were not disclosed to the league. So essentially, they entered into an agreement with players that compensated them in a different way, but that wasn't disclosed to the league. So that included compensation and benefits. Basically, because all of those were not disclosed to the league, when the salary cap went into place after this new CBA, that's why they exceeded it. Because I think everybody read this and said, okay, well, how can you exceed a salary cap with deals you made in 2023? You made those deals not knowing that there was going to be a salary cap in 2024. The only reason this is happening is because they made those deals and didn't disclose it to the league. So when the salary cap went into place, obviously the league took into account all of the spending from all of the teams when they created this new salary cap. So they created it, and then, hey, guess what? Angel City exceeded it because there was all of this spending that they'd been doing that wasn't disclosed to the league. So because of this, there are 3 disciplinary actions that were taken against Angel City. First, they were fined $200,000. Second, Julie Ehrman, who was the president and CEO, and Angela Hercules Mangano, the general manager, are suspended effective immediately from conducting duties related to any player transactions for the remainder of the 2024 calendar year. Third, and possibly most importantly, they were deducted 3 points in the standings effective immediately. Now that, honestly, is the biggest dagger to Angel City's season because they were in the hunt. They were in the playoff race. If those points hadn't been deducted, they would be sitting at 25 points, just 3 points behind Bay FC in 8th place at the playoff line. They would be just 1 win behind the playoff line. And instead, they sit 22 points, 6 points behind the playoff line with 3 games to go. They effectively lost control of their own destiny because of these 3 points.
Yeah, no, again, you feel like it's players being punished for managerial decisions, which we went into with the whole Canada and Drone Gate. It makes me sad for the players that their own management couldn't get it together.
It makes me sad for the players too, but I actually do agree with this type of punishment. Do you?
Yes and no, because it's one of those things where I'm like, the players technically didn't do anything, but you need to hit the team where it hurts. And if they don't make the playoffs, then that's a financial penalty along with what they've already been fined. And that's what they've got to do.
Right. If you're not going to hit them where it hurts, then perhaps next year another team could be like, well, hey, we can take a $200K deduction, and let's just go get everybody we want. We don't have to disclose things. We can start conducting business like this too. I think, unfortunately, this makes sense. Listen, did this like literally make or break Angel City's season? No, they were having a lot of ups and downs to be determined if they would have made the playoffs, but it certainly made what felt like, oh, it could be possible into this is a big stretch. We talked about some of Angel City's woes last week, right? This isn't just a case of like, this is a team that was going to make the playoffs and then they got 3 points deducted. There's a lot more at play here, but we're not here to discuss it. I'm going down a tangent. This is a big deal. This is obviously a violation of a new rule, so we've never seen a team get in trouble for something like this. This is a huge deal, and I guess I don't want to sound like the big bad wolf. Obviously, I feel bad for the players as well. A really difficult way to end the season because now they play North Carolina, Utah, and Portland to finish off their season. That's not a head-to-head with anybody that's in front of them that they need to beat. They need to knock off the Wave, Louisville, and Bay FC. So they really are not in control of their own destiny right now.
This, however, has led to the league saying that they're going to be conducting more in-depth investigations into all of the teams in the league. So I wouldn't be surprised if we did see some other teams maybe have fallen foul of this. I know a lot of people are talking about Gotham, but, you know, you never know. I'm going to say this, I have faith that Gotham played within the rules, but what do I know?
Yeah, I think everybody was talking about Gotham. I wonder if it was because they just heard salary cap violation and they were like, well, how can Gotham have all of these players and be within the salary cap? But it was specifically because Angel City didn't disclose certain payments. So if Gotham was above board, they're not going to get fined. But yeah, to be determined. Hopefully not. Not just because we both love Gotham. Let's go around the world. Around the world, around the world. To Spain. Barcelona stay on top after another massive win this weekend, adding to their goal difference by scoring 8. Both Real and Atletico Madrid also won this weekend to keep up the pressure.
To France, and we have a new league leader. After 3 matches, Lyon take the top spot after an emphatic 4-0 win over Montpellier. PSG are second after a 3-0 win over Le Havre. Paris FC, however, have dropped to 4th after losing to Saint-Etienne.
And over to Germany, Bayern Munich are 5 for 5 after a hard-fought win over Cologne. Wolfsburg climbs to 3rd and Eintracht Frankfurt are 2nd. 4th place Leverkusen play Monday night.
And finally to Scotland, Rangers hold a slim lead in the Scottish League after beating Motherwell 2-0. Glasgow City are right behind them with their mega win over Aberdeen. Hearts go 3rd after their win against Partick Thistle.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides researched analysis on loads of football, including the women's game. Want all the stats in one place instead of drowning in a mountain of tabs? Want to explore key matchups and the tactics from both teams? Total Football Analysis provides the stats and analysis to help you learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for just €10. That's €40 of the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
And finally, we had Jessica Silva, the new head coach of Brooklyn FC, on the podcast. Brooklyn FC, if you don't know, is one of the inaugural teams in the inaugural league of the USL Super League, which is the newest Division I league. Same status as the NWSL, but a different professional league in this country. And we had their brand new head coach, Jess Silva, on for an interview. Unfortunately, she could only do it late at night, and Allie was sound asleep.
Yeah, very much so.
So it's just me and Jess. We missed Allie greatly because we got into a bunch of great topics, including the difference between European and American football since she spent a lot of time coaching in Europe. So please enjoy this. And of course, check out Brooklyn FC, check out the USL Super League. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I am here with Jessica Silva, the newly announced head coach of Brooklyn FC in the USL Super League in the inaugural season. Jess, I'm so excited to be here chatting with you. Thank you for being on the Women's Soccer Show.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Looking forward to chatting about football. Or should we call it soccer?
We can call it football. Allie, my co-host, will be very happy that we called it football. First of all, congratulations on the fact that it was announced that you are the head coach of Brooklyn FC. That was announced very recently on September 23rd. How does it feel to be just out in the open, public information, and you get to step on the sidelines as the coach?
It's been great, honestly. It's been a long time coming, to say the least. My journey to this moment is quite particular, but I'm really, really excited to be involved with the team and on the pitch with the ladies. And we've had some pretty positive results over the last week. So obviously it's just a lot of positive vibes right now in the group and for myself.
Undefeated so far, a draw in the opener, and then 3 straight wins. I had to throw that in there because you mentioned it. But you mentioned it's been a long journey to get here. So let's just get into that quickly, because I think listeners really love hearing, for a lot of reasons, just how you got to where you are. And specifically as a coach, I think that's really interesting. And with the USL Super League being in its inaugural season, that is an added layer. You were born and raised in Montreal, but you have Portuguese and Italian heritage. And you're also the first woman in Canada to earn your UEFA A license in France. So congratulations on that. That's a fun statistic. Talk us briefly through your coaching journey and also how your heritage from your parents has maybe influenced your coaching style and your journey altogether. I know you spent a lot of time in Europe.
I think being a Portuguese Italian has had such a huge impact on me and my whole life. My parents immigrated when they were younger to Canada. So I'm a first generation Canadian. And I guess when I was a little girl, ball was my first word. It's a run on joke right now in the family, but soccer has been my biggest passion since I'm a kid. A lot of it has to do with my grandparents, my dad more specifically. He was my soccer coach for a really long time. Having European heritage, well, you kind of stick together as a community when you immigrate to a new country. And I guess I have this really awkward feeling of being Canadian, but being Italian and Portuguese, which is hard to explain, but it feels so normal to me because I grew up in Canada, but I grew up watching and cheering for Portugal and Italy at World Cups and Euros. And when you get together with your community to watch those games and you see the passion and the love for the sport, and you understand how it can mean so much more than just a game. And it just really ignites your own passion and love for the game. And I guess I grew up with that passion, and wasn't able to really get very far in my career. I got injured quite young, and the technical director at that point was like, "Hey, you need to come coach your brother," because I was so in love with soccer that it was unfathomable to think of me not doing it for a whole summer. And started coaching my brother and in my environment, in my club environment, and just kind of it grew from there. I started coaching boys for a very long time and eventually shifted over to girls. And I didn't really think it was a career, if I'm being honest, because it didn't seem realistic at that point. The opportunities were so little, even for playing opportunities were so little at the time that to me, to think I can work in football full time was crazy. So I later went on to McGill in physical and health education and was full time in spite of being at school full time. And I kind of just gained opportunities in coaching. And I think the 2015 World Cup in Canada really was a determining factor because I got into a FIFA scholarship course. And in that course, I got to meet people from all over Canada, but also Hope Powell, who worked in England and was the head coach of the English women team. And she was just like, you ought to go to Europe. And that kind of just pinched me in all the right ways and saying, you're passionate about football. There's way more opportunities in Europe than there is here. And you're going to be able to grow and you're going to be challenged. And I guess that feeling of doing something in Europe for football was something that really spoke like it spoke to me. So I decided, I think I was 30 at the time, or even I was 27, 28. I decided to go to Europe in France. I got recruited by one of their clubs because I was doing my UEFA coaching course down there. I had a crazy year before doing that, before going to and actually moving to France. But I started doing my UEFA course, meanwhile traveling with the under 20s and under 17 Canadian national team, meanwhile having and doing this course in France 7 times back and forth. And I met a lot of people, and there was just a huge opportunity at the time to go coach in France. And seeing that I speak French, I thought that was my opportunity to challenge myself and open my doors. And that's what I did. But I didn't know what I was doing at the time, or like I didn't even know. It's just such I just listened to my heart and followed my heart and followed my gut. And yeah, I found myself in Europe coaching, and here I am 8 years later in Brooklyn now.
All right, talk us through those 8 years briefly. How did you get from three pieces of luggage going to France to being the head coach of Brooklyn FC?
So I was recruited by US Orléans by a guy that took the coaching course with me. He was doing his UEFA as well. And we met, and he was just like, you need to come be my assistant, come work with our academy. You're great, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what? This is an opportunity. Why not? I felt like I was starting back from zero in my coaching because there was just so much expertise in France that now it's not like I was in Canada. I was giving coaching courses. I was leading some of the better programs. And then all of a sudden I found myself at the bottom of the food chain in France again. And that's something that doesn't really bother me in life, that like my parents both have worked hard their whole lives. And it's just when you gain a new opportunity, you have to fight and push and persevere through and go through the hardships of it, and you'll grow. And I believe that. And that's what happened in France. I worked at USL Leon, which was a Division 2 club. And then within a year and a half, FCMS president knocked on my door, heard about me, saw me coaching the under 19s. We were having really good results in the academy. I was assistant coach in the first team. And he's just like, hey, we're last place in Division 1. We need a different vibe in our group. We need different leadership. Please come on. So I visited the club 2 or 3 times before saying, hey, I got to do this. This is a great opportunity. And it's the one I've been waiting for. So took that opportunity and went to the very historic club of FC Metz, where I coached for 4 years. And then COVID kind of hit as well for about 2 years, which was really, really difficult, but I passed through that. And at the end of those 4 years, as a coach, you have no time for anything, let alone family, let alone for yourself. But you also lose time in learning. You're learning as you do, as you go, but you have no hindsight. Like 2020 is always great, but you have very little time for hindsight when you're in a professional environment because you're always like in the next action. So after those 4 years, I needed to take some time to breathe because I was like, it gets heavy. It gets heavy. The professional soccer world is really heavy, very complicated to navigate, very political. It's quite particular. And I just needed to take some time and space because I needed to make sure I still was in love with this as much as I was when I got to France. And so I started visiting different countries and kind of seeing different pedagogical approaches, different methodology. And I knew I needed to find the game again and coach again and need to be on the pitch. But those months off, those 6 months off, allowed me really to gain perspective in my coaching philosophy, in my mannerism. I'm a lot fresher. Had I jumped to the next opportunity right away, I wouldn't be where I am today. And Brooklyn needed a coach. They were in dire need of a coach. I think it was like May. And I started speaking to some of the directors in May, and they were just like, we need someone who's competent, but also understands like the Brooklyn vibe and understand that we're trying to build a project and it's a complicated one. It's New York City. And when I met the owners, I kind of just understood the importance of the project, and here I am.
All right, so let's get into what drew you to Brooklyn FC specifically, because you mentioned you were aligned with the whole vibe, everything they're trying to build. So what is that specifically, like what, or that you can share with us? What drew you to Brooklyn FC and what are you hoping to implement moving forward?
Yeah, I think it ties in with the USL Super League, right? Like It's a brand new league. There's everything to be built. You have to construct something from the ground up. You almost have to dig the hole yourself. And lay the foundation. And I find it really enticing as a coach and as someone in the football world to be able to do that in the women's game and to know how ambitious the ownership group is and to be able to spend money on players, but also staff and give us good infrastructures or give us good conditions. Their want to do that is what drew me into it. We hit some speed bumps on the way there, hence why we've moved game facilities. But just the fact that you're building something and laying the ground for something, that's not something that happens often in your career as a coach. And I obviously want to and aspire to doing other things in my coaching career, but this one is a very unique one that I'd love to get my handprint on it.
So I'm curious, you mentioned the USL Super League is a big part of it, and the USL Super League, I feel like, has made a ton of noise even since news dropped that they were going to be a Division 1 status league for a lot of different reasons. And we had the pleasure of having Amanda Vandervoort, the president of the USL, on last year, and she talked a lot about what they're trying to build in terms of the structure of the USL in general, and how because of how American soccer is set up with colleges and then a draft, we actually haven't had the pleasure of building academies through and through like they have in Europe. Do you find that the structure of what USL Super League or just the USL in general is building is more similar to that of the development structures in Europe? Or have you found it's just different altogether because it's in the United States?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a start. I think the USL Super League responds to a need in the US to have more women's professional teams. You had all these colleges, great colleges, spending so much money and developing all these athletes that then had nowhere to play except going outside of their own country and trying to find opportunities elsewhere. And you kind of never know where you're going to fall in Europe. You can have great Europe clubs, but others that are quite challenging. So the USL Super League responds to a really big need of the number of female players just playing in your country professionally. That being said, I know Amanda is working to having a more global view in academies, and I really do think there's a need for that as well, because I think the way that Europe has been developing their athletes and their female athletes more specifically is quite interesting and is allowing them to progress much quicker than expected. So if we look at the last results of the under 17, under 20s, and even World Cups, well, you have kind of a shift of who's winning these World Cups or who's getting into these finals. So I think that's very telling of the need to adjust how we're developing our players and the type of opportunities we're offering to our women in this country.
Yeah, I love that you said that. I talked a lot about that with Amanda, especially because as somebody who came up through the college system here, I would have loved if there were just more teams, more leagues, more opportunity. The majority of players who graduate college have to go to Europe right now, and the USL just provides more opportunities for them to stay and play here and grow the game here, is all that really does. I guess while we're on it, what would you say to people who have not tuned in yet to the USL Super League as a whole, because maybe they're stuck on the NWSL or it just hasn't gotten into the pattern of their life? What is the draw for you? If you're selling it to them, what would you say to get them to tune into the Super League?
I think the league's quite competitive. I think the league has different style of play than you'll see on the NWSL. I think there's a lot of talented individuals within the league, and it's a competitive one. I think this is going to go down to the wire, and I think the games are just going to get more and more interesting as we go. And the fact that the format is on a championship format and it goes all the way until May means you're left hanging all the time because it's not over until it's over. So it kind of follows what the European format is, and that's quite interesting because in Europe, you don't necessarily have playoffs. They're starting to introduce that to increase the fan base, but the whole championship of being good all year round is the biggest difference. Like, you can't just make the playoffs and then maybe win the whole year. That doesn't really happen in Europe. So yeah, the teams are going to evolve as we go. There's really good talent. They're very approachable, and people can literally get to know their teams and their players and actually go watch them play and meet and greet them. And I think it's a really great opportunity to bring their youth teams out and to see women that are still fighting, developing, and performing at a really, really high level.
All right. Before we get into the fun questions, I have one more because you mentioned, obviously you spent a lot of time in Europe, and we're talking about the USL Super League and how it mirrors a little bit more the structure of that of Europe, having coached in both now, and I know it hasn't been a long time in the US, but still having coached in both, what are the differences and what are the similarities between coaching in Europe and coaching here in the United States, just from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I love the team environment of Americans. Like, there's really a team concept. I don't know if I just got really lucky and it's just my team, but anyways, my group of girls are really a team, and they fight for each other. They encourage each other. Like, we have 28 players, but only 18 spots on the dress list, right? Mm-hmm. And the cohesion and the will to have the team before the individual is really interesting, because in Europe, it's quite the contrary. Players are a little bit more egocentric and want their own well-being or their own time and their performance, because they want to be able to progress their careers a lot quicker. So I would say that would be a big difference. The work ethic on the field, I mean, is quite the same. I think the technical tactical part of it is where there's a little bit of a difference. I feel like in America, we're looking for like an instruction manual almost at some time, whereas in Europe, they kind of feel the game a little bit more, and it depends on the situation. So honestly, there's advantages and not disadvantages, but differences in both environments. And the fact of being able to mix both of them today is what I find most beautiful and most exciting about my job, is going to be able to bring a European approach to a really hardworking group of girls that want to learn, that are excited about learning, that are excited about growing their own decision making on the field. And that's exciting to me.
Wonderful. All right. I've got two fun questions. One of them I'll save for last. We ask everybody. The first one, though, before we get to that, you mentioned obviously you support Italy and Portugal on the international stage. Do you have a club team that you most support?
Am I allowed to say this? I've been
That's up to you.
Since I'm a little girl. I've been a Real Madrid fan since I'm a little girl.
Okay.
Luis Figo was our hero, me and my brother growing up, and he played for Real Madrid. So did Cristiano Ronaldo. So Real Madrid's my club and always has been through thick and thin. Mind you, we've been winning pretty often. So yeah, there's that.
Yeah, not a lot of thin.
Yeah.
All right. Final question we ask everybody. It's very simple and there's not any context to it. It's just one or the other. If you have to pick, World Cup or the Olympics?
In football? Soccer?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, World Cup. I mean,
you're going to say that.
Yeah. World Cup all the way. The men don't even compete in it. It's the under 23s, right? So
yeah. I guess for women's football, then, does that change your mind if we're talking just in the women's game?
Portuguese, Italian. It's going to be the World Cup.
Okay.
Yeah, the World Cup is a whole different ball game. The Olympics is really cool, and I see its place and its importance in the women's game because it's permitted us to develop a lot in every country, more specifically Canada. I know that's one of the main reasons why we got funding, but the World Cup is the real evaluation and the real pedestal of football. So for me, it's World Cup.
I love it. We always get people answer differently. Some people know exactly immediately when the question is asked. They're like, I have this answer. Some people have to think about it. We have had some Olympics, just so you know, but we're starting to be able to understand exactly who was going to say what. And because of your Portuguese and international background or Italian background, I was like, it's going to be World Cup. This might even be a dumb question for her.
I thought, no, it's not a dumb question, but I thought you were going to ask Champions League or World Cup.
Ooh,
that one's a tough one.
Well, now I'm going to ask you that. Champions League or World Cup?
I just put myself in a film. Honestly, I can't pick. I can't do that to myself. Mm-hmm. I can't know. Because one you're representing your country, the other one you're representing like the best club in all of Europe. Like that's pretty.
What if I break it down to like group stages specifically? Would you rather watch the group stage of the Champions League or the group stage of the World Cup? Oh, still hard.
I don't want to pick between those two. I can't.
For me, it gets easier when I break it down to the group stage because I think that the group stage of the World Cup is way more chaotic. And I appreciate that more.
I mean, have you seen Champions League recently? It's getting pretty chaotic. There's some pretty big, even on the women's side. PSG didn't make it to the last.
I was going to say not on the men's side, but there's been a few on the women's side. That's true. It's getting more. Starting. I mean, it's getting more and more competitive. Yep, that's top to bottom.
Women's football
that's for sure.
is evolving, so there's going to be more and more teams competing and more countries competing for World Cups and Champions League.
All right, Jess, thank you so much for being on. Hopefully you can come back on. We were talking how you love tactics. I'm a tactics nerd, so let's find a game that we can watch, and we'll get on here and we'll just do like an hour dissecting each team. Each team gets 30 minutes and we'll just go for it.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Thanks so much.
And that is it from us at the Women's Soccer Show. Please make sure you check out our Patreon. We will have the extended interview that you have just heard up on there. Make sure you check out our socials. I will be going to the Champions League match of Man City versus Barcelona, so make sure that you check out the coverage I will be doing there. And then we're going to get all into it next week with WSL Champions League. We're going to have a more European focus next week, I promise, guys. But as ever, for the Women's Soccer Show,
I've been Sarah.
and I've been Allie.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.